welcome back to Aunt Susie's Kitchen. Today we're making gnocchi. Who doesn't love gnocchi, right? Super simple. We'll go over the ingredients real quick and we'll get started. These are Yukon Gold potatoes. This is 3 pounds that have been washed and boiled in a pot. Just barely cover them with water. Let them cook for about 20-25 minutes. And then when you can put a knife into them very softly and feel that the insides are cooked, then you know that they're done. So all we did is let them cool a little bit and then we peeled them. So don't peel them first. Leave the skin on while you're cooking them. We have a little bit of bench flour here, very fine sea salt, and we have 2½ cups of all-purpose flour. The only other thing that I have is a ricer. And a ricer, I don't know if you could make this recipe without a ricer. They're not very expensive, and you can use them for a lot of things, especially when it comes to potatoes. They make really good mashed potatoes, but you'll see when we use it why they call it a ricer. So I'm going to put this aside for now. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put, just like most doughs that you start with that you're going to work with by hand, I'm going to go ahead and put the flour out on the counter, obviously a clean countertop. I have my measuring spoons. I'm going to use 1 teaspoon of the fine sea salt, and I'm going to just give that a little bit of a mix before I go ahead and start ricing the potatoes, okay? And then just like when I make pasta dough, make a little well in the center, and we're going to start to rice the potatoes down into that well, okay? So super simple. We have our ricer. And something else you can do if you find that your potatoes are, you know, some larger than the other and they don't fit perfectly into the ricing holder, you can just give them a cut. So then once I put them in there, watch the texture that's going to come out of here when I squeeze this. And it's super fine, and they look like little tiny rice particles. That's why they call it a ricer. And we're going to go ahead and do that with all of these potatoes. And then we're going to mix this until it's a nice fine dough. So let me handle this part, and we'll come back in a few minutes and we'll show you what everything looks like. Okay, that's the last of them. So just use a flat end of the back of the knife, get that all off of there. Wonderful. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just gently work the flour into the potatoes, and I'm going to make a nice smooth dough. And it's really not much different than if I were just kneading any other kind of pasta or bread dough. I don't know if I mentioned this before. When you cook the potatoes, please make sure you salt your water. And salt it liberally. Do not be afraid, because the potatoes you can't salt them afterwards. It's just not the same flavor. It's like pasta. You can't flavor pasta after it's cooked. You've got to flavor the water. Potatoes, no different. So please make sure you salt the water that you're going to cook these in. And I always say, make sure it tastes like the Atlantic Ocean, and then you know you have enough salt in it, because you don't want to be cheap when it comes to the salt to make up, you know, your gnocchi, your pasta, your potatoes, whatever you're cooking in water. Okay, so see how this is starting to come together? And I have this extra bench flour here in case I need it. You could use up to 1/4 cup of additional flour if you need it. If you don't need it, that's fine. Again, we talk all the time about how measurements in the United States are different than they measure in Europe. In Europe, they go by weight, and so a pound is always a pound. In the United States, we use ounces or cups, and you know, a cup isn't always a cup. Depends on how packed it is, moisture in the air. It's actually very humid out today, so I'll probably need less flour than I would have if it was dry out. Okay, so we're almost there. You see how this is coming into a nice dough. Like I said, you pretty much knead it the same way. It's not going to have the same elasticity, and it's a little harder to, you know, move around because it is a little sticky. And you want it to be slightly sticky. In fact, you'll see the more that I knead, it's starting to get a little bit stickier. I'm going to actually stop for just 1 second and go get my bench scraper, because I really need that to move the flour around on the counter. So I'll be right back. Poof, magic. I have my bench scraper. Okay, so we're we're going to do is kind of bring all of this excess flour in. And I'm going to continue to work the dough a little bit. Like I said, you see it's starting to come together like dough, but it's still really sticky. And so you want it to be a little sticky. You don't want it too dry, but you don't want it so sticky that it's, you know, adhering itself to the counter. This looks nice. Very nice. See, it's still wet on the counter, so I might actually need some of this bench flour. Not too much, but like I said, I just don't want it to be so sticky that when I go to roll it out, it's sticking to my hands and to everything else. Okay, excellent. That feels nice, actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on the counter, and I'm going to let it rest just like I would if this were pasta dough. And I'm just going to let it sit here and rest. I'm going to clean up my mess around me, and then we're going to go ahead and get a pot of water to boil, and we're going to talk about the finished product. Okay, so we're back. So the dough has been resting, and now on the stove over here, come around this way real quick for me, my cameraman. I have a pot of water that I brought up to a boil. It's actually just coming up now, and like I said, it's salted well. If you were to taste it right now, you would say, wow, that's salty water, and that's exactly what you want. So let's go ahead and roll this gnocchi out so we can get some and taste it. Okay, so what I have here is just a little bit of bench flour, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut off a little piece like that. I'm going to bring it over into the flour, and I'm just going to roll it so that it's about the same thickness as this one that I've done already. You don't want it too thin. And what we're doing is we're just going to make a rope so that when we take it and we start to cut it, the pieces are exactly the same. And you're probably wondering, what is she doing with this cheese grater? Well, when I was a little girl, my grandmother taught us how to make gavadil, which is a pasta that, if you've ever had gavadil and broccoli, you know what gavadil is. But my grandmother taught us how to make gavadil by hand in the kitchen on Sunday morning, and we would use the side of a grater, and we would use that grater to put the texture on the side of the gavadil. And I'm going to use that same method she taught us, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use that to shape the gnocchi. Okay? So all you do is you have to make sure that this is floured well, especially this dough versus a pasta dough, because this dough is much stickier. And all you do is with your thumb, just very gently let it roll. See that? And you wind it with the texture on the back, and you wind it with a little pocket on the inside. And when you cook these and then you put them in your sauce, that little pocket grabs all the sauce, and each mouthful is just, oh, more delicious than the last. So that's it. That's the method. It's super simple. And here I am. I've just given out the family secrets, and I'm sure I'm going to get a phone call from one of my sisters later on. But listen, that's how we learn things, right? If my grandmother kept it a secret, I would never learn it. So make sure you don't keep this a secret. Make sure you show somebody else so that you also can give them an opportunity to make something delicious in their home. Okay, so obviously I have a little bit of work ahead of me, but what I'd like to do before I go away real quick is I just want to take these few and I want to bring them over and put them inside the boiling water and show you how nice and quickly they come up to a boil. And you can do like an entire pan of these. I don't know, I wouldn't overcrowd the pan. You definitely do not want to overcrowd, you know, the pasta when you cook it. You don't want them to touch each other. Again, this is much different than when you have dry pasta. Dry pasta doesn't tend to stick to itself as much as fresh pasta will. So I'm just going to go ahead and get a slotted spoon so that when the time comes we can pull them out. But you see they're kind of doing their own little dance in there. And they're only going to take about, I'm going to say maybe 4-5 minutes. They're going to start to float a little bit. If my memory serves me, when I was a little girl, my grandmother used to know that the gavadil were ready because they would float up to the top. And we weren't allowed to do that part. We weren't allowed to get too close to the stove when we were little. But these pretty much are going to act the same way. You see how they're starting to come up to the top now? And they're starting to come to a, you know, it's boiling more. And the ones floating on top are probably the ones that I put in first. So I'm going to get a dish. I have some red sauce cooking on the stove, and we're going to see how these come out. Okay, so we're back. we've got our gnocchi. We have our sauce. Oh my goodness. I cannot wait to try these. And of course, Parmesan cheese. You have to have Parmesan cheese, right? Mmm. Very delicious. Very delicious. They're so nice and light. Definitely, whoops, try to get away. Definitely make sure that you cook them enough though. After they come back up to the top, let them boil for another minute or two. And let them finish cooking on the inside so that they're not too gummy. But these are perfect. Piece of fresh tomato there. Oh, that might be too big. But, you know, make these because you're going to absolutely love them. If red sauce is not your thing, you could put a little bit of butter at the bottom of a skillet with some fresh garlic. You can use some of that fantastic chicken broth that we make along with some lemon juice, and you can make a very light cream sauce for it. You throw these inside the pan on top of the sauce and give them a quick toss. Fresh basil, a little bit of Parmesan, and you'll be so glad you did. Okay, that's all for today. Thanks for coming by. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And remember, there's always something good cooking in Aunt Susie's kitchen.